Hello guys and welcome to my new video. So today I decided to do a little different video basically about my favorite bosses in Tomb of Sargeras from a perspective of a healer. And when I say perspective of a healer, I mean I'm not only going to be looking at mechanics actually that I thought were really interesting. I'm going to be looking at things like damage patterns, the amount of healing that's required, how hard it is to heal up and things like that, because as a healer you spend like a lot of your time looking at health bars. And seeing them move up and down is way more interesting than just seeing nothing. So this is going to be a big consideration for me while making this list. So I'm going to be talking about top 3 bosses. So the number 3 boss is actually something that I was thinking a lot, because I had the 2 in mind already, the first 2. And the third one was like, I wasn't completely sure. There was quite a few to pick from. So this is, number 3 is Kiljaeden. And why is it number 3? First of all, after doing the whole Tomb of Sargeras, the whole bosses, I was kind of sick of the soaking mechanics, and Armageddon is one of the main mechanic in Kiljaeden where you have to soak every couple of, I don't know, a minute. I can't remember how long it is. But I felt that soaking mechanic was so overused, and for the last boss, soaking mechanic is one of the biggest deals. And I wasn't really impressed by it. I mean, the soaking ability does drop a debuff on you, which actually requires a bit of a healing, and as a restoration druid, you're happy for dots. You're just basically happy for dots, you can just rejuvenate them. So I thought that was kind of cool. I mean, there's the shadow phase where you go into shadow and you have to get the buff so you can heal. I feel the whole shadow concept was actually more of a gimmick than actually a concept. Once the person find out where it is, actually people find it like in the split second, and you just run, get the buff and run back. And I don't feel there's anything really special in that. The phase 3 is where damage really happens. It's super mobile. You have to avoid obelisks, which obelisk is kind of like those walls that go up and they shoot out lasers. I thought that's actually quite interesting. There's no weak corner that can predict where is the safe spot and things like that. And I thought it's an interesting concept. You have to really find a good spot for you, and it's very mobile. There's a decent amount of healing in phase 3. Phase 3 is my favorite phase, and that's why Kiljaeden is number 3. Even though there could have been other bosses that I felt number 3 could fill that spot as well. I'm not hugely impressed by it, but it's a decent fight. Number 2 I thought was very interesting is Sisters of the Moon. So after doing the first couple bosses in Tomb of Sargeras, you can kind of see a progression in mana intensity. Grot, Hajat, Tantamonic Institution, they don't really acquire a lot of mana. Then you start doing bosses like Mistress Sajin, and you're like, mana might become an issue, it's getting longer and longer fights, and then you hit Sisters of the Moon. So when I talk a lot about these bosses, this is talking about like the mythic. Sisters of the Moon mythic before it was nerfed was just insanely mana intensive. You brought like 5 healers, and I remember the first couple of pulls, I was like, the boss is at 50% and I'm like 10% mana, and I've gotta change my whole game style. I gotta use talents that are more mana conservative. I've gotta use maybe mana regen trinkets and things like that. So by just having an insanely long fight with insane damage throughout the whole fight requires, as a healer, to do way more work. I'm sure for DPS this was probably not as interesting as it was for healers, because the healers really had to maintain their mana. And the second most important part, why this makes my second best fight in Tomb of Sargeras, is dodging glaives while having to heal up your party, heal up the healing shield, is super vital. So you have, first of all, the glaive will probably is the number 1 reason why people die on Sisters. And not only that, but you not only have to dodge that, but you also have to maintain the maximum HPS. So a lot of people use healing cooldowns, but sometimes you might not have a healing cooldown, or someone might die and things like that. So you actually have to maintain maximum HPS during a period with there is the biggest mechanic happening. This obviously doesn't happen every time, because sometimes you get glaive without the healing debuff. But it happens a couple of times throughout the fight, and it really kind of tests your ability of making sure that you see everything in your surroundings, and making sure that you use your perfect rotation for healing. And I thought that was really cool, and the mana issues also made it way more interesting as well. So that's my number 2. Number 1 for me is Maidens of Vigilance. I thought Maidens was a very cool fight. First of all, it's insane amount of damage, especially if we're doing mythic progression right now. it is probably the most healing intensive boss in Tomb of Sargeras. I mean, you see numbers like 1.8 million HPS and things like that. So it's really fun. It's really fun to see the bars drop. There is a movement involved in it when you have to go from one platform to another platform around it, and you have to make sure that everyone's alive as well. So Resto Druid putting up pots and things like that is really, really, really good. Another interesting concept about this boss is that when you're soaking the orbs, if you're soaking the right color orb, you're getting a buff to your healing and DPS. So doing mechanics correctly will increase your output. I think that should be incorporated in more boss fights. I feel that's an interesting concept. It's rewarding you for doing better mechanics. Of course, there's people who can just soak the orbs for themselves and get all of the buffs for themselves. But in a good guild, everyone should maintain maximum HPS, DPS while doing mechanics correctly. And like I said, there is huge amount of AoE, there is decent amount of movement. You have to pay attention every time, especially if you do Mythic. It's one of those type bosses. If you've done the Mythic Maidens, or if you tried it, it's one of those bosses where you absolutely cannot fail anything, and you have to make sure to do good healing or damage. So it's one of those bosses where you can do a lot of healing on the run, you can pop cooldowns. If you look at least Resto Druid talent selection for this boss, there's a lot of different variations that you can go with, and a boss that requires you to change talents, I think it's always really good. Or where a lot of different talents are viable, I think it makes it a lot more interesting. And this has been my top 3 bosses in Tomb of Sargeras. Let me know what top 3 bosses are for you. Let me know if I missed out some of the bosses, if you feel this list is not the best. Of course, this is my personal opinion. From a healing point of view, for DPS and tanks is going to be way, way different when they're looking at boss mechanics, because healers don't really care about tank swaps and things like that. But let me know what you think about this, and I'll see you in my next little video.